begin, let me just give you an explanation as to why I haven't been uploading in the past 2 months. I live in Portugal, and we had a quarantine period due to the COVID-19 epidemic, and because of that it has been impossible for me to upload these past couple of months. That should change now. I can go back to my routine, and yeah, I hope everyone is keeping safe and staying healthy out there. So today we are going to move on our Airbnb clone, and we are going to find a way to upload images for each post, and we want to upload as many images as the user wants to. So for this we'll be using the Firebase storage, so that we can store the images somewhere and then get the URL which we can use in order to display an image. We are not going to, one might think that it is enough to store the image in our VM, for example, that we are going to deploy in the end. But no, you should never do that. You should always have a bucket in a service like Google Storage, and you have AWS offers that service as well. Azure offers that service as well, so you are free to choose. All of the codes between them are quite similar, or better yet, the codes are different, but the logic is the same. You send an image and you retrieve an URL for that image. So that's what we are going to do today. I have 2 images in here in my desktop, and the purpose of this lesson is to, by the end of it, be able to store these images in Firebase storage and retrieve a URL which we can store along with all of the information of all of the rest of the information of the post that the user is currently trying to make. So yeah, let's jump right into it.
Before carrying on with the video, I just want to let you know that only 20% of you are subscribed to the channel, so if you are enjoying this series and want to see more of it, then please do leave a subscribe down below. It will help you to not miss a single video in the future.
Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is to obviously put our development server online. So let's say sudo docker compose up --build. It will ask for a password, so that just let this run, and it shouldn't take as long as the first time, because obviously everything is stored in cache, and because of that it makes everything a lot faster. I'm going to simply open up VS Code in the same folder. Let's grab it right here. Alright, and in the beginning of this lesson I'm actually going to make a couple of changes to how the code is structured, because I had some time to think about this. And the first thing that I want to do is to move the config folder of the backend to the root folder. So I'm going to grab it, move it there, and then in the Docker file, in order for the Docker to create and to move the contents of that folder into the Docker container, I'm just going to come in here and say copy, and it is config to the folder config. I made a mistake there, so let me just put a dot there. Okay, and this should all be fine and dandy. And now in the functions I want to move this away from here. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I did this in the beginning because it was easier. But now looking back at it, it is best to have all of the configuration stuff out of the way from the source code, and to just have it in the app.js. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to come in here and simply paste it there. But now the require is a bit different, because you don't have to go to back. It is in the root folder of the backend, so you can just leave it like that. And you only have to initialize it once, so it will work without any issues whatsoever. Okay, so that part is done with. Now, the other part that I want to talk about before jumping into the storing of images is a verify account function. And the reason is we are currently using this entry of the user JSON that's called STS token manager, which works sometimes and sometimes it isn't as reliable as I want it to be. So I did some searching around and I came up across a function that's called getIDToken, which we can use in the front end in order to force generate a token which we can send to the backend, and that way it will work pretty much every single time, as long as the token is valid, obviously. Let me just take a look at the backend. Yeah, it's run okay, but we'll take it down again because we messed with the Docker file, so we will have to redeploy it. But we'll get there in a second. So the first thing that I want to do is to, again, as I said, force generate a token. And this is really quite simple to do. Let me just find the function. There we go. This is really quite simple to do. So let's go into the front end and go into login. And the first place where we will be doing that sort of thing, it's in the login system. So what we'll do is, before calling the user check, which will create the user, and one small parenthesis here, I'm doing it like this, checking the user and then creating the user with that function like this, because, well, I have not deployed the project. One good way of going about this is having a trigger using Firebase functions, which will call an endpoint in our backend each time a user is created, and creating a user that way. But for now, for development purposes, this is more than enough. So in here, simply do firebase.auth, and remember, we are trying to force generate a new token. Auth.currentUser .getIDToken, and now the getIDToken takes on a variable, an argument, and this argument is a boolean, which can be either true or false, obviously. And if true, it will force generate a new token. If it is false, it will try to reuse a token that already exists. But I'm going to always generate a new token because that's the safest way to go about it. And then simply the then part takes, the then callback, takes on a function which will retrieve an ID token. Open up the parentheses and move the Axios posts inside of it. This is not correct, like that, yep. And then we can simply catch it at the end, just make sure nothing goes bad. And if it does go bad, then we can at least know what happens. So catch and error, console log error. Okay, so right now it is creating a token, but we are still not doing anything with it in the backend. So the first thing that we have to do is to, first of all, come in here and say ID token. This will add it to the parameter so that we can receive it in the backend. And now going to the routes of the backend, this is where all of our endpoints are, we are going to add the ID token in here. This again will deconstruct the rec.query and parse everything into a variable as it was when you made the call. In the verify account, again, I'm going to add the parameter ID token. I'm going to remove this console log because we are not going to need it anymore. And in the ID token, simply pass the ID token. The verify ID token, simply pass the ID token. That's the better way to go about it. Okay. And now, but remember, when we create a post, we also do this. We send the token and we verify if that token is valid or not. So we'll have to pass it along as well in the post.create. So simply come in here, ID token, and in not the models, in the functions.post, add the ID token as well. And to verify the account, ID token. Okay, this just makes everything work that much nicer, and it is as per the documentation of Firebase. So that's the way that we're going to go about it, and the way that it should be done. Now, in the front end, obviously, when we create the post, we'll also need to call this function. So I'm going to simply grab it and say that, create, grab the catch, which should go in here, I believe. Nope, that's wrong. Let me just try to find the place where it is meant to go. But ID token, let me just follow up with oh, okay. This one is meant to have the parentheses and not the other one. Okay. So now it will also generate the token for when we create the post, and then we must pass along the ID token. Okay, and that's it. This will work a lot better, so I'm going to quickly deploy it, just show you that it works, and then we'll move on to creating images, or to store images in the Firebase storage. So let's do it.
2 hours later.
Okay, so the project is running. I added a user verified log when the verified ID token is triggered. So that way we can know that it works for sure. So let me just open up the Google Chrome, jump in here, log in, give it some time. It should be done. And yeah, user verified. So it worked nicely. If you get a bunch of errors that it can't verify an ID token for whatever reason, then you'll have to sync up your PC using to NTP, I believe. That's a simple command. I believe it is NTP update. You can search around in Google, but if you find that you can't verify the ID token, go in the comments and tell me about it, and I'll find a command for you. Okay, so now this part is done. Now let's jump to the fun part. We are going to quickly close everything, and now in here we'll have, I'm going to just make it a bit easier to see, and I'm going to open up routes and models and posts. Okay, in here we'll have in the create part we'll have another input. This input will be responsible for gathering the images and for getting everything and for having a button which the user will click in order to get images. So this will be an input. You can just grab the final one. And the type will be file. Now it will be multiple, and this tag will let the input know that the user can choose multiple images. And the value won't be anything. We'll delete that and say onChange equals to this dots handle file change. But this function obviously hasn't been created yet, so let's do it right now. First we'll need to bind it to these components. So this dots handle file change equals to this dots handle file change dot bind this. You're more than used to do this by now, surely. And now simply create that function, which will be handle file change event, and open it up. Now, anytime the user clicks on the file input and the file changes, then this function will be triggered and the user will be able to change the files. Okay, now to change the files, we'll need to have an array of files. And to do this, first we need to create that variable in the state of this component. So let's just call it images. We know what they are. And then in the handle file change, let's say this.setState. And just like we do for everything, open brackets, curly brackets, and I'll say images. But now it is a bit different, because in order to save the file, we'll have to say events.targets.files. This is the variable that will get us the file. So the event is from the input, and then we have the target, which is in the JSON of the event, and then inside the target we'll have the files. And you are free to console log this, and better yet, I'm going to actually do that in order for you guys to be able to see it when we finally run this part. So event target files, and you'll see that in here it will be an array with all of the images data that comes from the user picking the images. It is really quite simple. Okay, so now we can move on to handle submit, because now we'll have to change some things around. The first thing that we'll have to do is obviously to get the images and to send them to Firebase storage, and then to retrieve the URL, as I've said before. Now, to retrieve the URL, I'm going to come in here, and I have another project that I created in order to test some things around, but you'll do the exactly same thing in your Firebase dashboard. You'll go into storage, and in storage you'll say get started. Next, then you'll be free to change the cloud storage location, and then you'll say done, and it will be creating a default bucket. This is the bucket where all of the images will be. I don't know if you will have a profile, so if you will have a profile image, but pretend that we do. All of the profile images and all of the post images will be in this bucket. It takes some time to create, so just give it some time to breathe.
3 hours later.
And after the bucket is created, then this page will appear, and as you can see, it looks like a file manager system, and it is exactly what we need. So all of the files will be in here. Okay, so now jumping back into the previous parts, let's come in here, and I made a mistake in here. It is 2 points and not equal, obviously. That's a bit silly of me. But now we'll have to install, or better yet, we won't even need to install anything, because we already have Firebase here. And because this package contains all of the Firebase parts that exist, so it has real-time database, it has storage, it has functions, it has everything. So we don't even need to install a package for this, which is really quite nice. So we can just crack on coding these parts. So the first thing that we need to do is to initialize, not int, this isn't Java, initialize a variable which is will be called total saved. This will keep track of all the images that have been saved and that we've managed to retrieve the URL of. Because remember, we can't save multiple images at once, so we'll have to save each image individually. That means that because this is asynchronous, all images will be finished being done uploading in different times, and it won't be it won't go line by line of code. So we have to keep track of how many are saved, so that we know when we have reached the end of uploading every single image, and only then can we call these parts of the code, which will send all of those download URLs to the backend. So, other thing that we must do, let me check. Yeah, now let's do the loop, which will loop through all of the images. So let I equals to 0, I smaller or equal to, smaller or equal not, smaller than these.states.images.length. This will give us the number of images that the user has chosen, obviously, and I++. For now, let's just push this aside because it isn't important to us at the moment. We are just trying to get images saved, stored in the storage, Firebase storage. Okay, so now we'll do one thing that's really important, because we must set the name to the file that's going to be uploaded. Now I don't want to send the image, an image with the name that the user has on their PC, because they might have similar names or equal names, and the whole storage becomes a mess. Just to make it a bit nicer and a bit easier to work with, I'm going to set the names of each and every single image to the timestamp, the current timestamp of the PC, and that will erase that problem. So images i.timestamp equals to date.now. And you'll see this working after, but this will simply create another entry of each image, which will be called timestamp, and it will contain the timestamp, the current timestamp of the PC. So now let's say const.uploadTask, and if you followed up with the Android videos, this will be known to you, and the logic is basically the same here. So now we say firebase.storage.ref, and this ref will be the position, the position of the image within our storage. Let me just come in here. Where was it? And I'll show you in a second. Okay, so now by position in the storage, I mean not this. You can come in here, for example, and create a folder which we'll call posts. And you don't need to do any of this, it will be created automatically, but I'm just showing you how the data structure will be. Then inside posts we'll have the user ID. Each user ID will be different, obviously. And then inside here we'll have all of the images, which will contain the timestamps of the image. Okay, so that's how we are going to go about this. I'm going to quickly delete this. Okay, it is deleting. Now going back to this. So as I said, we first have the posts folder. Then we'll have the ID of the user. So we can simply come in here, do this, and then firebase.current-user.uid, and this will give us the ID of the current user. But we are not done yet. Now we must pass along the timestamp of the image, which will be the final destination of the image and the name of the final file. So let's do the same, $, open curly brackets, this dot state images I dot timestamp. Okay, and then in order to finalize the process, we just say put this dot state images dot I, and this will place the image in the upload task, and then we can simply start the upload task and to follow up with the upload task, and it is really quite simple to do. So this part is done. Now I'm simply going to go into the storage Firebase documentation, and I'll be back in a second to show you first of all how to read documentation, and secondly I'll show you where to grab all of the data that we need in order to complete the upload task. Okay, so here we are. This may be a bit smaller. Let me just make it bigger. This is the upload task, just like we did right now, and now we want to implement these parts. This is all documented in Firebase. I can link it down below, and you guys are free to follow along. So we'll have the upload task, and then it will keep track of the state changed. So we'll be free to know what percentage of the image has been uploaded. And then in the end, we have this function, which is called, like it says, handle successful uploads on complete. And we are free to call this upload task snapshot ref get download URL. This will then give us the URL of the image. So let me just grab all of this. Yep, come in here, paste it, and there we go. This will simply console log, so we don't even need this part. The part that is really relevant to us is this get download URL. Okay, this is the part that really is tremendously important. But okay, for now I'm going to save this and show you how it works. Let me just come in here, and it gave an error, so I must have done something wrong in the input. Yep, there we go. So let's do it like this. And file, multiple change, yeah. All of that seems fine. I'm going to quickly comment out this part just to make sure that the upload part of the process works, which is the only part that we aren't sure right now. So let's come in here, create, browse. I have those two images that I want to upload. But first of all, let's just upload one. I'm going to open up the terminal. And as you can see, we have already one file list. And this file list, if you can remember, is this console log. So it is logging all of the images that are we've chosen. So house2.jpg, let's modify, size, whatever. It has a bunch of information regarding the file. And then we'll hit submit. And when we hit submit, you can see that the upload is 0% done, upload is running. Let me just check if the storage has that image. And it hasn't.
3 days later.
Okay, I tested and it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't, and this is, I'm not sure why, I believe it cancels out the upload process because it jumps to another page. And that's because we can't have a form. It must be a div. And because I believe it is because when you submit something, it reloads the page, and because of that, it cancels out the process. So I'm going to remove the onSubmit here. Going to the last input, we'll keep it, but we'll simply change it to onSubmit. Instead of onSubmit, it will be onClick, this.handle submit. And we can add the event here if you want to check some things out, but which we won't need it. And now it should be working. So let me just come in here. It is in the login page, so let's log in. Everything should be fine. Yeah, user verified. It is never too much work to be sure. And then let's just open up the terminal, the developer tools, just so that we know that everything is working fine. Going to desktop. Again, the file is there, submit, and it is uploading. And we can see the upload process here. And then we have the final link, which is the download URL. And we are free to access the image right now. So let's simply come in here, open it up. And this is the image. And let me just show you what it is. This image was just uploaded. Now we can even go into our storage here, reload it, because it isn't in real time. And there we go, we have posts, then we have the ID of the user, then we have the image itself. Wonderful, right? So now what we want to do is to first of all try to upload a couple of images. So let's try and do that. This is not the terminal where I want to be. Let me go into Google Chrome and choose a couple of images. Now the file list has 2 images. Let's submit. And we got a couple of links. So the first link and then the second link. awesome. This is exactly what we needed. So now all you have to do is to pass these download URLs to the backend and store them somehow. How we are going to store them? The first thing that we have to do is to go into the post.model.js model, and in here we'll have to add an entry for the image URL list. So let's add a comma there, image URL list, 2 points, I'm not quite sure, yeah, that's a better way, 2 points, and then because this will be an array of strings, we have to start with the brackets and then the curly brackets, and the type will be string, and that's it. Now we have an array list of image URLs in the model, and if you had posts that had already been created, then they will appear empty by default. Okay, so we can close out the model. Now in the routes.js we'll be accepting the image URL, obviously. Let me just grab it here, check, not create. Okay. Now, in order to keep things generally similar, I'm actually going to come back in here and grab the image URL list. This will be the variable that has to be passed along from the front end. Image URL list in the create post, and we'll add the image URL list also in the create post. Okay, and then the only thing that you have to do is to add the image URL list when we create an object. Then the object will automatically add all of the items that are in this array list in the post object. Okay, can save it, save this, and that's it. In the backend, we don't need to do anything else. So in the create now, we have some work to do. It is really quite simple. All we have to do is to check if the total images saved is equal or greater. It will never be greater, but just be sure than these state images.length. If it is, then that means all of the images have been saved, and we can simply make the request to the backend. So the first thing first, we'll need to do total saved dot plus plus variables. This will increment that variable, and we'll be free to compare it. So if total saved bigger or equal to, yeah, bigger equal or bigger, no, like that, then these dot states images dot length, then we can come in here, grab all of these that we did in the previous lesson, and just paste it there. Now it will make the request. However, how are we going to send the array list if we have none? That's where we have to create a new variable, which will be up top. Let's say let image URL list equals to an empty array, and then anytime an image is created, you simply come in here and say image URL list dot push download URL. This will add to the end of the array list the download URL, so it will add every single download URL to the image URL list. And this is the list that we are going to pass along to the backend. And because the backend is ready to receive exactly an image URL list, we don't need to parse anything. It will be just working. It will be that pretty. Okay, so yeah, I believe that's done. Now we can actually try it out, I believe. Let me just double check. Yep. Yeah, everything is working fine. I'm going to, or better yet, everything seems fine. It will have a bug for sure. That's my luck lately. But yeah, let's just console log image URL list just to show you that this array will be updated with every single download URL. So let's save it and try to run it.
Eventually.
Okay, I ran the project and obviously I forgot something. What I forgot was in the endpoint create, the create endpoint, I forgot the ID token. Just add it here and then everything will be fine. Okay, so let me just show you that it works. You just see everything is okay. Let's say post with image, description doesn't matter, just add a couple of things here, and then add 2 images. Okay, the file is updated. Let's just upload. Done, running, done. Yep, everything seems fine. User verified. It has 2 posts, that's right. And then in the list, post with image, and it has everything. Let's just come into the network and see the request. Let me just open it up. We are going to display the image in a second, but just make sure that the backend is working. And there we go. The last image has 2 image URLs, and yeah, they seem to be fine. Now, for the final part of this lesson, let's learn how we can show the image. And it is extremely simple because you just need to pass it in source, in the source of the image. So it is really a no-brainer. Let me just close all of this up. Okay, in here we have the list.js, which is the page where we list the images, obviously. So inside the li in the list item, we are going to come in here and say image, and close that up. Then we'll give it a class name, which will be a bootstrap class, which will be call-md2. This will make sure that the image is small and not as big as the user send it to our backend. Because otherwise the images would be all different sizes. This just makes sure that it is at the size of the bootstrap size of 2 in a medium screen, and you can check that out in the bootstrap documentation. It is really nice, and we'll be using it a lot because it makes everything really simple by using flexes and things like that. And it makes sure that you don't need to mess with styles all that much, which is something that I always thank God for. But for now, simply say source, open curly brackets, current post dot image URL list, and by default we'll display the first image that appears. So let's simply say, let's simply save that, go back into our post here, and there we go. We have our images being displayed in the posts. So as you can see, they are there. I had already uploaded another image, so another post, so that's the reason why there's 2 with images. And this was one that I had uploaded, but then deleted all of it from the storage, so it isn't being able to fetch that URL from the storage. So as you can see, it is really simple. And now in the next lesson we'll probably build the post page. We'll be able to quite easily add images to a slider and for the user to be able to easily go through the images. Yeah, and that's probably the next thing that we are going to do. I also want to start working on some front end, try to make this a bit prettier. I'm not a front-end developer, so it won't be really all that mind-blowing. But I'll show you some tips that I use in order to make all of my websites look somewhat nice by using some dependencies that are really cool and take all of the work out of your hands, and they do everything for you, which is really nice. So that's all for today. Thank you all very much for watching. Keep safe from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is always important to remember that. And yeah, keep safe. Ciao.